Okay, I think we're ready. So so you guys have all yours open. I just need to open my blank file as well. So I think I have mine. Should look like probably hopefully like this. Yeah, this is the same one. I'm going to get rid of my properties panel. We don't really need that. We will later if we become drafters. Right now, just for using the model space, I'm going to do it like this. So yeah, I just have this just helps me keep my bearings. And when we get into customization, I'll kind of talk through these logos that I've loaded up here. And it helps me to have like something in space that's kind of related to my size that I'm going to draw in. So you know your way out in space if everything disappears like that. Remember how you get yourself back to square one if you lose yourself in model space is just double click the scroll wheel and that will zoom into whatever you've drawn. Now, if you've drawn something that's like Saturn away from where we are or out to Jupiter or whatever, it's gonna need to capture that in a zoom all. So if you've drawn something way out in that space and you double click and it doesn't act like it's zooming in on something, it's probably because you have some bit of like geometry drawn out and about on some way far perimeter. So anyway, I like this. I can kind of visualize, see it. Anything I'm going to draw is going to be roughly this size. So what we're going to do is I got my sheet up. And when I talk about my sheet, I'll pull up my PDF so we can kind of see. So my video will show me what I'm looking at here. So the last thing I'm going to open up, maybe I already have it, is my PDF. This thing here, heck yeah, that's what we're drawing. So, in this situation where I'm not drawing from scratch, I'm drawing from some existing design. I'm just going to follow this. It's all been dimensioned. It's kind of been dimensioned. I've kind of dimensioned this like an ASME standard kind of drawing dimensioning style that a drafter might do. They might do something like this to you and make you work from something like this. It's not that everything is explicitly dimensioned. It's just that there's enough information here to draw this. And so if I just analyze this for a minute, um, really common on this is kind of an odd shaped part. It really is. It's got a lot of contouring going on. Um, maybe I would analyze this as saying it's basically kind of rectangular and then it's just got a bunch of tapers to it and stuff. But it does kind of have a rectangular feel to it. It's got an overall kind of length and width. So I can definitely kind of start with thinking of it as kind of a rectangle part. And then if you notice, a lot of my dimensions are based off of maybe center lines, which would be pretty common on a weird shaped part with kind of weird edges. A drafter or an engineer might decide, hey, I'm gonna give you dimensions kind of based off a center line. And they gave me like a vertical center line. And then the actual other, there's like this other center line that isn't truly like the horizontal center line. It's actually kind of the center line of these holes, these big radiuses here. So anyway, I'm just kind of getting familiar with what dimensions I have to work with and how I would piece this together. So everybody kind of sees geometry different. That's why when I start to draw this, if you follow along, we'll get it there. If you see geometry different, you can kind of draw especially once you get once you feel good about the commands in CAD, you can kind of start anywhere on this. Honestly, I could kind of start drawing this from anywhere, but a lot of times with any shape that I draw in CAD, I usually start with the overall outside, those visible outside lines, the object lines. Then I start to look at it as like, oh, what are the features of that part? Like that, I consider this rectangle kind of like a feature that I need to add. I consider my custom geometry to be like a feature that I'm going to add to that. So all I'm really going to focus on is the outside profiles first, and then I'll focus on interior profiles or features. So the way I see to proceed with this is and here's another thing, and then I'll read the notes, right? It's like any drafter and engineer would tell you, hey, did you just read the notes before you even started? And that's something maybe we jump to conclusions, start working on stuff before we read the instructions. Pretty common. I do it all the time. I walk through doors where I didn't read the sign on the door. This just happened to me. I went to drop off my propane bottles to get recertified, and I drug them into the I just walked into the Suburban Propane and put them on, and the gal at the counter was really nice. And she's like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna just take your name and stuff." And this other guy behind the counter goes, "I need you to get those bottles out of here and put them outside." And I was like, "Okay." And I walked out and set them out. And I noticed on the door it said, "Leave all bottles outside." Yeah, yeah. I didn't read the freaking label before I walked through the door. So, and the guy was a jerk, by the way, too. Kind of offended me slightly, but well, I'm kind of sensitive. So I kind of felt like the guy could have said, "Hey, sorry, there's a sign on the door, leave your bottles outside for safety." And I would have been like, "Oh yeah, shit, sorry, man." I bet you weren't the first. Yeah, the problem is they have 15 signs on the door. So who's going to stop and read all that? They oversigned it. The one that I needed to read was kind of right in the middle of the pack. Not super obvious. It wasn't outlined in red or anything, so I think they could do better labeling. But what I'm going to show you here is why I'm reading the labels here. It's got a revision history block. These notes here, so the way I'm going to draw this is because I've read this note here, specifically note 2. Part is symmetrical through vertical center line. So that means that this part is essentially the same right to left, right? If I draw the center line down through the middle, it's the same. And I can kind of visually see that. Oh, it's symmetrical. It's not symmetrical if I had a center line, if this horizontal center line was actually center of part. It's not symmetrical that way, but it is symmetrical kind of left to right. When I read notes like that, sometimes it speeds up my draw time. If I can recognize symmetrical stuff when I draw it, sometimes I can only draw half of it. CAD has some really fast methods to like if I draw half, I can mirror it over. And that's not unique to CAD. Like a lot of like offshoot programs from CAD will have similar drawing and kind of modifying commands that CAD has. So I already saw this, and so I'm thinking, well, I'm just going to draw half this sucker, and then I'm going to like mirror it over this center line. I'm going to have it. So that's the way I'm going to proceed, and that's me knowing a little bit more about CAD than you guys know, and that's fine. And that's just why I'm going to proceed this way. And so if you just proceeded to draw the entire outline profile, piece by piece, that's fine too. That wouldn't be wrong at all. I'm just because of a little bit of interior knowledge that I have and I read that note, I'm going to be able to jump to maybe drawing half of this and then copying it over, kind of mirroring it over. So the first thing I do, like a lot of shapes that I draw in CAD, I will kind of just set a preliminary boundary for this. And the one reason why I sent you this file is because I've done a little bit of formatting here for us. And the formatting I've done, I'm only working, so I've gone in your drawing here. So what I've got is the home tab. The ribbon menu is just the home tab. What's kind of critical when you draw in CAD and different than when we opened it last week is when I came to this layers property panel, this little layers palette here. If you click this drop down now, I've just got a bunch more layers than you had. So before, like default, if you're starting from scratch or starting from a template, I think we opened a template last time. And from that template, which is a .dwt file, I've kind of from that template I've done a bunch of formatting. What we call front loading in CAD is like just spending some time to get my layers. And really my layers are built by just like from what you remember about mechanical drawing or blueprint reading is it's really just layers by line types. So I've got hidden lines, I've got construction lines, I've got center lines, break lines, and a few other things that are more related to the actual let's see here. And I can't remember if I've changed my layers from what I sent to you or simplified them. I think they're the same as this, though. I think it's this file, actually. So you probably have all these layers. Some of them are more for like a draft or on the paper and the things I need to do on the paper space. We're in model space. Everything we do will just be on model space. I'm never going to have to take it to paper and worry about printing it. That's more than we need to know. We just want to learn how to draw something that a machine can cut. So all we really need to work with is model space. But I do need to kind of jump around with these layers, and we're not even going to use very many of these. I use construction layer, and I think maybe if I sent this to you, maybe you have two construction layers, which is kind of handy. I could make as many as I need. I mean, some drawings will have hundreds of layers, and so there's no limit to how many layers I have. It's just kind of how I separate lines, and then I color code it so I can see them and make that break up, and that's the whole thing. So I've done a little bit of front loading to this, so you don't have to. And mostly what we're going to use is like a construction layer. And how you select which layer you're drawing on is just bring that drop down menu and drop it down. And now I'm on the construction layer. It shows it in this dialog box here, construction. So we're going to use construction and we're going to use visible object lines too. So that's the only thing is I saved us some time by preloading these layers. And where I built those is if you actually do this layers property. This is kind of this, and yours might not be this big. I've drug mine out. So these are expandable boxes. If they're too small to look at, you can kind of grip them. They're weird boxes. CAD has weird dialog boxes. Always the grips to move the box is on the side where the X is generally. They can either be left or right. They're not like top and bottom like most like dialog boxes. Whatever, for whatever reason, just CAD is that way. But I've actually just gone in here and like created these and named them and decided if they're going to be plotted and what kind of line they are and their line weights and their line types. So I've actually preloaded all this. It takes a fair amount of work to build this. And you just piece it together. And so you don't have to do that for us now, but that's what I was just going to show you. That's kind of what I've done. And it's just to kind of separate and organize my work. Like I said, like I said last time, a .dwg file is a really data heavy file. It has like everything I need. And it's what I create a DXF file from. So I got those DWTs as a template. They create DWG files, which is most of my data, and my drawing files and my project files. And then if I ever need to export to cut it for a machine, I'm going to export a DXF file, which is a really simplified file. And doesn't have, I can even delete a bunch of layers. I don't even need them because I only need the one layer where my visible like cut lines are, is all the machine really needs. You can put in a DWG on our particular plasma and it will read all those different layers and all those different lines that I've drawn on them. And you can choose at the machine input to actually deselect them so they don't show. So there, it's not the end of the world if I load a DWG on a cutting piece of equipment. It's just the primary file type that your plasma cutter, laser cutters, water jets want to read is a DXF file. It's just that universal file type for most machine inputs. So, and that's kind of the direction we're headed here. But let's start drawing. So the way I kind of start drawing is I look at like if this is kind of based on a rectangle, I'm just going to first draw like, and I'm going to do a lot of construction kind of layout work here. So that's why I have a construction layer. It's not really going to be stuff. It's just for me, I don't have in CAD, I don't always have to worry about just drawing with the actual lines that I need. I can draw with construction and do all kinds of different like geometry to help me place my actual lines. And that's what I'm going to do here. So the first thing I'm going to do is build like a boundary because this is rectangular. I'm looking at this as saying, well, it's got to fit in this boundary. And what is that boundary? Well, the dimensions I see are 18 inches width overall by this 11 and a half inches overall height. So this height and width on this boundary is what I'm going to draw. So yeah. And so I'm going to draw myself a construction rectangle that's 18 by 11 and a half. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to click on my construction layer. Are you just jumping in right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did a job orientation.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So in order for you to log in, I'm going to have to stop my casting here. So I'm going to, and then let me push pause on this for just a minute, you guys. Let me get it ready going here. Good. Yeah. So what I'm doing is first I'm just going to draw a rectangle that is this overall size, and I'm going to draw it anywhere. I mean, you don't have to hook it to any specific point at all. So the way you can draw a rectangle is this way. I'm going to go into align command. Align command just wants you to start somewhere in model space. It says select the first point, so I can go anywhere. And then how you actually draw perfectly horizontal, perfectly vertical, right? Is that there's a couple different ways. The way I'm doing it is I'm actually using this polar tracking here, right? My polar tracking, circle with an angle in it, has all these angles that I can snap to. All of them have 90 and 180. So no matter which one I have selected, whether it's really a fine selection or a coarse, I can always snap vertical and horizontal lines using this kind of a snap tracking setting. So a lot of times I'm on like when I'm just being my coarsest, I'm usually on 30, 60s, 90s, but that's why I'm snapping and seeing that green line. That's at 0 degrees. That's at 90 degrees. Another way people will do this is what we call ortho mode, and it's just the right angle down here. Some people prefer, and some people memorize this is an F8 on your keyboard, but this is ortho mode. This only allows you to draw vertical and horizontal. And then so you can see that it actually turned off my polar tracking actually, and it turned this on. The only disadvantage of this to me, it's really good for keeping things in alignment. If you think of orthographically aligning views, top, fronts, right side views, we kind of use this. My only problem is when I go off of it, like if I hit F8 off, it doesn't automatically turn on my polar tracking. So I have to sometimes remember for me to hit click F10. So F8 and F10 are pretty handy like keyboard commands that you can do with your left hand or whatever. You can type them in. I am a little bit lazy. I don't use ortho mode as much as I use just my polar tracking, and I'm just kind of careful that I get a snap like that before I draw lines. So if I'm drawing this rectangle, my way might be like, oh, it's going to be this way, like 11 and a half. And then you'll notice, anytime you're drawing, the dialog box that's blue is the one that you can put an input in. And I use my 10 keypad on the left side, sorry, right side of my keyboard. I use that 10 keypad for most of my data input. You have to have number lock on to use that keypad. That's generally where I'm using like with my left or right hand. Sometimes I'll break my right hand away and I would type in, oh, this is 11 and a half, 11.5. I can enter that in right into the dialog box. It's going to draw this line 11 and a half inches. Another guy just asked, yeah, we are in inches. That's one thing is the type of template that I started this was in inches already. You know, the templates when I showed you last week, there was an A cat. It just if I well, let me look here. Let me show you. Before I even think about that, this is in inches. Just know that. So the data that I'm putting is in inches. Everything that I put in this will be in inches. When I have multiple dialog boxes for geometry, like this line, I could draw it by length, but I could also draw it by degrees. It's that grayed out dialog box that I'm not in. To get over to that dialog box is just tab. Tab goes back and forth between, and it locks my other one down too, right? Like if I've entered some number in here. This would be by degrees. I could enter in a particular degree and I could tab over and enter a particular length. But that's how you get from when you're drawing geometry, there's usually multiple dialog boxes to actually put data into. And so just be aware of that. And how you get into them is tab. So I just did 11 and a half, and then I'm going to say enter, which is the kind of I'm entering that data, then I'm hitting enter. It drew my line from where I clicked down 11 and a half inches. And line is a continuous command. So I can keep drawing this now. I can go this way. It's 18 inches this way. So I'm just going to make sure I'm like not pulled off on some weird angle that I see that snap. And then my hand just jumps over to the keyboard and says 18 inches that way, enter, and then it's going to come up. Polar tracking is kind of cool too, because you can kind of like lock in on some geometry that's already existing and kind of like track to it. So I could enter 11 and a half here, yes, but I can also come over here and like hover for a minute on that endpoint. If you were not getting an endpoint, like this little green square to show up, it's because you don't have the O snap configured right, object snap. And so anyway, I'll show you that in just a second. If I'm not seeing that, that's on your status bar down here. It's the square with a little square in the left corner. That is O snaps, object snaps. If you click the expandable menu there, we have geometry. We have like, I would guess I should say there's these grips on geometry that will show up if I have them selected. You can see that I have most of mine on. Sometimes they get a little bit busy, but that somebody asked, how do I snap to a midpoint? Well, you would need to make sure that midpoint is selected because it is geometry that has a snap to it, but you'd have to have it snapped on. Otherwise, you won't see the midpoint snap won't show up. The one that I'm targeting is an endpoint right here in this particular thing, but so I'm like targeting, that's an endpoint. Here's actually a midpoint. It looks like a triangle like that. And really, lines only have ends and midpoints. That's kind of the only grips they have with them. But this is my object snap tracking and how it works. Sometimes I can just highlight on something, pull away from it, and then it will kind of shadow. Sometimes I have to do it a couple times there, and it's like pulling away. I kind of use it to kind of shadow, like, oh, there it is, 11 and a half inches. And I see that that's what shows up in my dialog box. But that's one way to kind of keep straight. And then I'm going to go snap back until I see the snap show up. There it is. And then it keeps going, but you can hit escape or you can hit enter. They kind of they kind of escape the command the both ways. So sometimes people just hit enter, and that's kind of the end of a rectangle that I've drawn. That's the boundary for where my part will live. And yes, I drew mine up here because it didn't matter where I drew it. If you've locked it in wherever is fine. So if you notice one thing if you're starting a line command, you could draw it by coordinate points right here, right? So that's what it's showing first is like the X and Y value. So if you typed in 0 tab 0 enter, see it actually threw me down there to 0 coordinate point, or so I didn't do that because I don't really need to be associated with the origin. That's fine up in here. But anytime you're in a line or a polyline, what it's giving you is the XY coordinates there. And a lot of times it just doesn't even matter. I just pick some random place to start my box. Let me show you another way to draw a rectangle. And I probably did this on if anybody reviewed the videos, which I don't have a lot of students that usually do, so I usually have to repeat myself. But rectangle is like that's such as life as a teacher. It's okay. Rectangle is this little command here, rectangle. What it shows is 2 points across from itself, it will draw a rectangle. So I could have come out here with this command and been like, well, just right here. You just go like a rectangle just needs two points to define it. I can either pull down and away or up and away. So I would pull this down this way, and then you can see I have access to both like linear dimensions, the length and the width here, or technically it'd be the width. It'd be the width and the height if I was thinking as a drafter. But yeah, this would be 18 this way, tab 11.5. And that's, so rectangles are generally quicker ways to draw. If I'm just drawing a rectangle, I usually use the rectangle command. And the biggest difference is This one was drawn individual line segments, and so they kind of stay like they are hooked together on their endpoints because I definitely make sure that I saw that endpoint snap show up as I like kind of connected the geometry. We're able to get it
You can try and go out there and get more photos of it.
because your authentication isn't working.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, right on. So ends and midpoints, that's good. This one is different though because it's a rectangle command is kind of this. It's actually like this enclosed polygon, so it's like a single selection. I can select it. It still has midpoints and it still has endpoints, but really it's like a single selection geometry. And this is just me like left clicking on this stuff to select it. I can left click it and delete it if I want. I think I showed you this right at the end of last class. If you're out here and I don't have any commands selected, in order to delete something, I can just like click out here and pull away. This is a window crossing. This only will select stuff if it's completely covers it. And this way is the left or right to left window crossing. And if I just even touch geometry, it will select it all. The difference is over here, it wouldn't select that because it's kind of separate geometry in a way. So this is just something you kind of get used to in the way CAD kind of interprets geometry in some ways. You can lasso it too. That's just like a click and hold. But it still means the same thing. If it's blue, it has to be totally captured. If it's green, it can just be partially captured to select it. So I'm just gonna delete this one. I can just single select it, and then I just hit delete on my keyboard. You can use erase, but I just usually use delete on my keyboard. I'll just keep this one. It doesn't matter which one you kept. If you drew it by rectangle or drew it by line, it's fine. It's just a construction boundary. I do want center lines on it though. You're right. So the next thing I would want to do, because I'm going to kind of build from the center line, is I'm going to pick line command. And I'm just going to come in here and draw, and I'm going to look for that grip. I have to have that midpoint selected. That's right there. If I don't have this selected, it looks like this. I have no like I can grab the endpoints, but I can't grab any midpoints. I could figure it out, and but it's easier if you just use these O snaps for sure. So here's my line. Now to a snap. If you see it, it'll bounce over to it no matter how close you get. If it shows up, it's going to snap that line to it. So sometimes we can just be in the area like this and it shows up and it's going to snap me to it. I'm going to draw this one straight down. So I clicked on that midpoint and then I'm going to draw straight down like this. And I'm going to look for the other midpoint. And once I see it like that, I can just left click again and it will snap. It'll snap to that midpoint. So it's really critical that our geometry does hit itself just right, right? Like I do want to not create gaps in geometry a lot, right? Especially if I'm thinking about a machine cutting my line, it doesn't like gaps. So, I mean, the snaps in CAD are the only way that I can totally make that happen. So there's at least the vertical center line. Here's the horizontal center line. It's going to be a snap there. Maybe I don't need this, but maybe it's nice to know. I don't know. It's just construction geometry. So I'm going to click there, click here, and then I just escape or I hit enter and I'm out of the command. Anytime you don't know if you're in a command or not, just hit escape a couple times and you know that you're like starting from scratch here. So there I've got like some good geometry to start with. And then I'll pull up this thing here. And so I'll draw. I think I'm going to start drawing this the same way I did it for last class. I'm going to draw this from the bottom. I'm going to go over this far. And then I don't know if I'll be able to come up this way, but maybe I'll be able to figure out where this is, come around here. So I'm going to piece this together just with the dimensions I have. So one thing to note about this is that yeah, I've got all these linear dimensions, but I've also got these radius. Pretty much every point on this is radiused. I'm going to put that in last. That's kind of like a modify feature. And I explained on the last time I did this is that, it's not always that outside corners are radius. It just happens to be that this part, they'll all be radius because this is kind of a finished part. There's nothing else welding to it necessarily I think you guys will put some hooks on here if you want to or something, but essentially, I think it's like I feel like these outside corners are just detuned for like just so they're not sharp to my hand if I was handling this, throwing it in and out of my truck or whatever. Like it's just not going to jab a sharp corner into my hand. But it's not that we always radius outside corners, especially in like weldments and like if I'm building stuff like, and that from laying out weld joints that I like to have like corner to corner fit up, especially if I'm doing like outside corner joints or even inside corner joints. different kind of layout fit up techniques. I sometimes want, I mostly, if this is going to be built and there's going to be other pieces welded to this, I'm not going to radius corners, by the way, just so you know, this is kind of like a finished part outer perimeter. And so that's one reason why we can radius it. So with that in mind, I'm gonna have to come back and do those. But these dimensions are actually to the sharp points, is for one thing, and that's why if you like, I don't know if you could zoom in on this, it's kind of confusing on where the thing is taken. It's actually the dimensions are taken to the actual point before they were radiused. So that's kind of nice to know. Anyway, I'm gonna draw this. I'm gonna start this from this center point here, draw over 2 1/8. Then I would love to know this degree, but I don't really have it because I know that it's going to come up and then hit kind of where my boundary is there. I don't have that, so I'll at least draw this in and have the point. Then I'm going to come up over here to the corner of my rectangle and I'm going to like cursor up is what I'm going to call this. This is what confuses the heck out of a lot of people. So bear with me when we get here. First, I'll draw this line. So we come back. I'm going to move over to my visible layer because this is what I'm drawing is actually machine cut stuff. So it's visible object layer. And that's what shows up here. I'm gonna choose my line command again. That thing started here, so I'm able to target either the end point or the midpoint, it's gonna pick whatever grip it's gonna want to pick. They're both kind of overlapping each other. As long as I'm getting a snap there, it doesn't matter. And then I'm gonna pull over. It just wants to know how long in this linear dimension, horizontal. It's 2 1/8, right? 2.125 is what I enter in there. Enter. So another reason that you need to know your decimal equivalents, right? Not too bad here because my dimensions are in decimals, which is an ASME standard like machine print to be in decimals. Okay, so that's as far as I can go. I don't know how far that would go up, but I do have this line over a line. And so I have to be careful doing that. I try not to draw like too many lines over lines, especially if they're the same color, because I just can't even see them. They just disappear on themselves and they're hard to find. And it's true. They just can you can draw over the top of itself and it'll be hard to find these segmented pieces. The machine will find them because if it's a visible line, the machine's not going to find my blue line. And the main reason why is because I've got my blue line, like, so it's not a plotted line. It actually isn't going to be like interpreted by a machine downstream for me. Not even the printer is going to interpret it. So it's not, anyway, yeah, bear with me here. But that's that line. It's 2 1/8 long. The next one here starts, it's 4 3/4 up here. So what I do is I do this a lot in CAD. It's kind of like a cursor. I just want to move my cursor up to 4 3/4. And then I'm going to start from there and start drawing. There's a lot of different ways you could do that. I mean, technically, if I was on the construction layer, you could say, well, I'm going to draw a line, click it here, go up, and that would be drawing a line over a line. However, it's a layer that I'm going to turn off anyway, so it's not the end of the world. Like this is one way. You could just like click another construction line that's like 4 3/4 up. And then here's that line that's kind of a line over a line. And that from that end point is where my actual part starts. And it's really from that end point to connect back to here. So I could use this as a technique. I just don't do this as much. It's just like it's like a lot of lines over lines if I kind of do this. So I will do it on occasion. You'll see me break my own rule a little bit. And sometimes I will do this. I'm going to delete this one for a minute though. I'm just saying that's one way to find out where that line starts, but I can do the same thing in what I call just like a cursor move. And what I do is I'm in the line command. I can just target a point, but not click. Like I'm coming in here and I'm not left clicking. All I'm doing is hovering over it. And then I start to pull away in that direction. And what I'm getting is a gray box that I can enter a dimension into. And all it's going to do is move my cursor from that point that I locked in on up to whatever I punch in here, which would be 4 3/4. And so all that did is it did not draw that line from there. It moved my cursor up to there, right? So that's cool. I'm on the construction layer, which is not what I really want to be. But it's not the end of the world. I'm just gonna move over to visible object. I'm gonna pick my line command. I'm going to hover for a minute, no click. Just start dragging in this direction. Enter your number, 0.4.75. And then it moved my line up to there. And now it wants to start my line here. What I need to know is how long this line is. And it's not explicitly given, right? I don't have a dimension of this from there to there. I have it from here, and then I have it up to maybe where this radius starts right here. So I'm going to do that. I'm just going to do a little math here. I'm going to say, well, what's the difference? This is I cursored up 4 3/4, and then this is 9.6 up to where maybe the radius would start here. So I'm just going to take the difference of these. There's, let's see here. What's that? Well, not really. This is up to 11 and a half would be all this material here. Right. Yeah, this is 11 and a half.
The center one, radius.
Right here
Yeah,
at 11 and a half,
yeah. That's for a 9.60.
right here.
Oh,
11 and a half is kind of the overall. It would be from top to bottom here. Yeah. So that I've got that's my rectangle box is 11 and a half by 18. Everything has to fit inside there is what I kind of built that boundary. So technically, right, I'm going to go from here up to here. And then I have a weird radius coming in. So I'm going to have to do a little math here is the way I see this. And that's all right. I have a calculator on here. You also have a calculator. If you don't, like all computers, especially, Windows 11 has one loaded. If you go into the search menu down here on the bottom, and if I typed in calculator, you'd have a calculator app. It would show up like this. This is kind of handy. You don't have to use this one either, though. That's just the Windows calculator. Let me show you. There is one in CAD. So there's a CAD calculator here. So if I have my PDF on my table and I'm just looking at it and I just need to know the difference on one of your utilities, I'm still on the home tab, utilities. There's the calculator. It just looks like a little calculator right here. So if you pop that up, it's kind of nice because it can stay docked on your screen while you're drawing. And if you're crunching numbers, I like to use it. It's a little bit awkward to use. I'm gonna have to get rid of the zero, but it works as a basic. Yeah. What's up? Oh yeah, take off. See you, man. Did you log out? If you want to, well, yeah. If you don't log out, I'll log you out before anyway. So I can't remember if you can log out if I'm on your screen. I think you can. And so I just want to know the difference of these two. So it's like I'm going to enter like 9.6 is one direct. Oh, let me click in this box here. 9.6 minus 4 3/4, right? 4.75. 4.85 is how long I want to make my line. So if I come back in here to this line command on the visible layer, target for a minute, cursor up, 4 3/4. Then I'm going to start drawing this line and it's going to be 4.85 inches long. Bam. I just made sure to pull that off to the side. So it's right over the top of that line. And there it is. There's the side of our grinder stand. And now I can connect these two endpoints together. So that's kind of where that point and that point. So I can just come back here to align command and look for those endpoint grips and I'm just left clicking. I'm still on the line command. I can just hit enter or escape and I'm out of it. So now I've got some pieces. Cool. It gets a little more complicated, obviously. We got to get all this in here now. I could definitely draw this one. This one's easy to draw. Across from the top center line, it's 2.5 inches over. So I can go do that now. It goes from the top center line over. So I'll just pick my line command again. Click there, drag it over. It's 2.5 up here. So there's that one. And then it comes down to something and comes back up. So, all right. Let's define that. I felt like when I looked at this for the first time, I was like, well, what's really driving a lot of this is kind of the location of this grinder where this thing's going to hang here. So this center dimension really, I feel like is going to, if I can draw a circle from this center point, that's a lot of the visible line work that I need. And then I got to figure out how to connect to it. But let's draw the circle, this circle from by its center. And so let's see, we come over 6 inches from center and then we come up 8 inches. So it's 8 and 6 is where I read the center of that circle is. Okay, so that's cool. So there's a bunch of different ways I can do that. Like, yeah, I mean, this is some argument why people might put their thing on an XY coordinate and then be able to like punch in those numbers, but I don't worry about that too much. I'm just like, well, I just got to know that it comes over 6 and comes up 8. And so maybe I'll put in a center line across a horizontal center line that is 8 inches up from the bottom. So I'll do that. I'm going to go over to my construction layer, construction. I'm going to go back over to line. I'm going to do the same thing where I just come over here and hover for a minute and then pull up. This is 8 inches up is how far that center line of that circle was. And then I can just draw this thing all the way across the part. It's kind of like, there's no reason. I know I only need to know where it crosses here, but it's like it's kind of my projection line mentality is that I project across my views essentially. I mean, we draw the same in drafting, especially in CAD, as you would in mechanical drawing. Like I'll draw a view and then I will project from that view to create other geometry for right side views and top views. A lot of times as a drafter, I start with my front view and then I project from it, just like you would with your T squares and line and your triangles actually. So it's very similar. And that's why I would snap that all the way across. It's almost just like a habit. Center line of circle this way. Maybe center line of circle is over here 6 inches. So let me show you another command. You have this geometry. And so CAD has this kind of cool, we could do this. We could do the same thing. We're on the construction layer. We could come over here and target here, hover over 6 and draw this line down, right? And then what it does is create this little cross section where the circle center is. I'd probably project it all the way down. A quick thing that we use a lot in CAD is this in the bottom modify is this little like double, it's an offset. And so you guys did offset lines. This is kind of what this offset command is pretty powerful in CAD. I use the heck out of it, especially in order to use it, I have to have geometry to offset from. And so really the center line of this is 6 inches over from here. And so what I can do is, this is how this command works. I can't remember if I showed the other group this or not, but this is offset. I click offset. If I follow just the commands on the screen or look at the command line, it wants to know what is the offset distance. And I'm going to say, oh, it's 6 inches. Because I'm going to think about offsetting this center line over 6 inches. So I'm going to say it's 6 inches is my offset distance. And then it says, well, what object are you offsetting? And I'm like, well, this vertical center line. And then if I pull this way or that way, it's offsetting that line 6 inches is what that's doing. That's cool. It's super handy actually. So you don't have to pull out your compass and do the little arcs or whatever, but that's kind of it's doing that, right? Like you used to use arcs to offset your lines, right? Arc and radiuses. That's kind of what that did. That's an offset command. What it created for us is this center point for our circle. This is the way I draw a lot. I use construction to locate center lines all the time, construction layer. But now I want to draw actual visible. So I'm going to snap back to visible object. So, I mean, this is annoying with CAD. I've got to keep going back and forth to the layer. You just get good at it. It's just kind of a normal like workflow that you just get good at. And let me show you something. Let's say I forgot to do that because I like to show things when they go wrong, right? Like say it's not the end of the world even if you forget because I could draw a lot of this on the wrong layers and I could just push it to the right layer. So technically I could be like, well, I forgot to switch layers. Now what? Do I have to delete and redo? No, because here comes this circle. So I'm going to stay on the wrong layer technically. We're looking to do this. We're looking to draw this circle. We've got the center located. We just need to know its diameter or its radius. It's given here. There's two of these with a radius of 1.75. So that's good to know. Just so you know, like ASME standard drawings would tell us that if it's a partial circle, generally where it's going to be considered a radius. If it's a full hole, like a full circle, we're gonna notate that by diameter. That would be like an ASME standard for a drafter to supply you work like that. We wouldn't call this a diameter of one and whatever that would be, like 2.5. We wouldn't say that. We would say this is a radius of one because it's partial circle. So just so you know, if you ever see that, this is correctly notated. There's two of these, meaning there's one here and there's one here. So, which is kind of nice. Usually I'll draw with whatever information I'm given because when I go to CAD, so this is a radius of 1 3/4. So I'm going to go to my circle command. If you remember, if you watched my video and we talked through these, there's a lot of different ways I can draw a circle. Like the default one for CAD is center radius, and it always has been, but they've got center diameter. So sometimes if the dimension on my print is by diameter, I can just choose that circle command and draw by diameter. Ours is by radius on our print, so this works pretty good. Just use center radius. The circle command wants you select it and it says what's the center point of circle. Well, that's the whole reason why we constructed this particular little crossing here. And mine is an X that shows up. If yours is not showing up an X, go to your O snaps. Anytime you think there should be a grip that's not, it's probably just that it's not selected here. And so if I bring up my list here, let me get my calculator out of the way. I think what's showing up on me is this intersection here. It's like a cross, an X, I guess, more than a cross. So I have my intersection O snap selected. And so that's why when I pick center circle and I come over here, it'll snap to that pretty easily. It's an intersection point. I click on that, left click, and then pull away, and there's my diameter. Of course, I'd be like, crap, I'm on the wrong layer. Well, don't worry, we'll push it to the right layer. If you're on the right layer, that's fine, but I'll show you. So this was what, 1 3/4. So 1.75 is what I put in. Enter, and there's that one. In order to push something to the right layer, it's pretty easy just from this without even any other dialog boxes. I can select that geometry. So I've got it selected. I can just come up here to my drop down list and say, which layer did you mean that to be? And I want it to be on visible object layer. And then I can just escape the command now, and it pushed it to the right layer. So you can always draw. I mean, you could go to town drawing and then make sense out of it later. I tend to try to keep, especially while I'm teaching, I try to keep track that I'm on the right layer. But in some regards, it just doesn't even matter because you can always push it to the right layer later. And anyway, so it's never the end of the world. In fact, that's one way to push it. There's other easier ways to push it. Um, Let me show you one more way. Since if you learn in CAD, there's always like 10 different ways to do the same thing. And so I like to at least point out a couple. That was one. Select geometry, select what layer you want it to be on. Another way that works really good is kind of like in Excel, like if you ever worked with Excel or Word much, or even Google Docs and stuff, they always had this, and I have it up on my home tab, this properties panel, this properties palette. I get with this paintbrush, like match properties is one that I use probably the most. If I have geometry that's on the right layer, I have to have geometry drawn that's on the right layer. And I do have. I have some visible line stuff here that I've drawn correctly, and I have some construction stuff, but I can just match properties. So what it does is it's like match properties. Oh, select the source. So it's like whatever is the correct layer. So this one is to me is the correct layer. And then it always goes electric blue when you've selected geometry. And then it says select destination objects. Well, actually, this is what I wanted to change. And even when I get over to it, you can see it's changing. So it's just kind of this paintbrush smash properties. It'll push it to that layer too. So like my go-to is usually this, but I have to have some of that kind of geometry up. If it was a hidden layer it needed to be on, I'd have to actually go through here and pick hidden or something. So just so you know. Okay, cool. Now we think, oh, it's just going to drop in to there and then come up. Well, no, it's a little more complicated than that. What I noticed is when I was just working from an existing one that had been drawn like last year because I didn't have a drawing for it till this year. So it was my first time drawing it. But what I noticed when I looked at it is like, oh, technically it's a little bit more than half of it's not just a half circle here. It's just a little bit more than half a circle here. So I'm technically this where that point is down to my quadrant of my circle is not exactly where they align up. I need to know like, well, how much above center is that? And we did our drafters or engineers did give that dimension to us. They're telling us it's this 8 1/4. So I think I'm going to draw one more horizontal line across this thing that's 8 1/4 inches up from the bottom. Just so you know, this is a real common way to stack up dimensions too. Because when I like interpret this as a draft or whatever, I look at this as saying, instead of these being like chain dimension, like here's 4 3/4, then here be 4 8 7 or if 4.85, like we figured out like drafters don't dimension like that because it does what we call is like tolerance stack up. And chain dimensioning is like working from one dimension to the next dimension to the next dimension. If I'm off on one dimension, I'm off on the rest, right? It impacts the others. And so that's called chain dimensioning. Generally, as a rule of thumb, like drafting standards, we try to avoid chain dimensioning because if you're off on one feature, you're off on the next one. So this particular drafter has chosen to kind of pull these dimensions from the base of this. And this is establishing what we call like a control or a datum. And so I'm like basing all these dimensions off of like this one surface of this object here. And that's pretty like I just wanted to point this out. It's one reason why they're kind of the same reason why I'm pulling from center maybe this way is that I'm actually kind of establishing the center of this thing as a datum and the bottom as a datum. And I'm kind of controlling dimensions in case you're inaccurate in how in case there's some inaccuracy on how the person is missed one feature, all the other features aren't impacted by missing it in one. That's the nature of like control and part control a little bit. It might not be user friendly for the person that's building it and be like, well, I wish you would have just given me this dimension. It's like, yeah, well, I didn't want you to be like off on this and then off on that and have a totally unacceptable part. So I'm trying to establish what I considered a good base point to pull all these dimensions from. So it's a little bit annoying and it makes me have to do a little bit of math But I'm going to do 8 1/4 now. I'm going to put that line in. So that's a little bit of a lecture for you there. I said it's like drafting. It's like drafting for welders 101. So you get a little bit of that. Okay, line command. This is construction layer to me. I'll just cursor up again. So I'm just hovering over, no click, drag in that direction. If it won't drag in that direction, just do it a couple of times because if you're off a little bit, it won't let you cursor up this way. I have to kind of target in and be pretty careful with my mouse movement. That is a little bit annoying. I do agree. You get a little bit better control, but just like I kind of carefully control and pull up, and then I'm going to say 8.25. So give yourself a little grace on that. It takes a little bit of a fine. And I'll just pull this one all the way across too, just to keep uniform. Oh, that was me right clicking and pressing enter, but that's a normal way that I do it. But I could have just clicked on there and hit enter. Some of my bad habits come in. But essentially what I needed was a line that's 8 1/4 inches up. Remember, if you don't ever know if you were correct or not, if you fat fingered the dimension, where your calculator is, you have this measurement tool that can measure distances, can measure radiuses and angles. So I could measure this distance just to make sure, like I could come in here and target this point and just target, I'm just left clicking here. It does show me that it's 8 1/4. So in case you like are ever wondering if you've got it right, use your utilities palette, pull a measurement, make sure that it's like what you think it is. Because you don't know it's right until really as a drafter until you start dimensioning on a paper, and then you start to feel like, and then you start to get no, you find out if you've missed fat fingered a dimension and things are not drawn correctly. So I get in the habit of checking myself as I go a little bit. So I checked that. That's good. And then what we have is now we have a point of a cross, kind of an intersection point here where the circle meets that is going to come back up to where we left off this line. So now we can connect these two lines. So I'll go back to my right layer, visible object. We're going to finish this, I promise. We only got like 20 minutes. Oh yeah, we're going to finish this thing. There's my point. And it goes down to here, not center. This is quadrant, by the way. If you see this diamond, that's a quadrant grip. That's just because I have it selected here, right? Quadrant's that one. And what has quadrants are circles and radiuses, or yeah, or circles and arcs, I should say, have quadrants on them. So I have quadrants selected, but that's actually not where I'm going. I'm just going to this intersection point here. So I actually want to be above the quadrant to this intersection point. And that's where I want that one to end. Escape or hit enter. Cool. Now it comes up from that point up to something here. I think we have to figure out like a center point of where that fillet radius is. Kind of the same way we based off this geometry from this center line. I think I've got to build more center lines here. Let me look. Yeah, this one. So I got to figure out our line comes up and ends, and it should hook up to like a radius right here. So I'm going to draw another like full circle. That's the other thing to note is I've drawn this and that's where it ends. I haven't like what I'm going to do is I'm using the first full circle to my advantage, and then I'm going to come back and trim it so it's just a radius or just a half circle or a little bit more than half a circle. So I'm going to trim later. I'm going to do a little bit more drawing, and then I'm going to trim. So I'll show you. And trim is just a modify command right here. It looks like a scissor. The opposite of trim is extend. So if you've used extend, then trim kind of disappears. But trim is usually the default, what's showing. I can come back in here and trim later, but I'm not going to do that yet. I'm gonna put in my center line for that. So let me look at some dimensions. Let me figure out what that one is. I think it's at 9.6, right? So at 9.6, which is the top of my line. So I kind of have an endpoint there. I could just go to that grip and then draw a line across. And then I need to come over from this center mark over 8 3/4 and drop another center line down to get this here. So I'm going to draw in this with construction layer. I'll go back to my construction layer. And from here, I'm just always zooming in and out here, so I know it's a little bit annoying, but yeah, I feel like this line that we drew is right on that 9 3/4 or 9.6, right? I could measure that real quick, just to make sure I got that right. It's from here to the top point of that visible line is 9.6. That's cool. So I can come in here with just a line on the construction layer, target this endpoint, draw it across. Really, I only need it to be right here, but I'll still do my standard and I draw it all the way across. One reason I might do that too is because I might not realize that I could mirror this or whatever, and I might just need that geometry over here to work from, So it's pretty normal for me that if this was not symmetrical, that I would be like pulling these points across anyway. So that's the 9.6 up, 8.75 over is what I need to do. So I can cursor that over. I can come over here, lock on for just a second, pull away carefully. You only have to pull away just a little bit like that. It could go the wrong way on me there. That the only reason why I hesitated for a minute is I could see that my green line, well, I don't know. I think this might be okay. 8.75. It goes in both directions, I noticed, but there it is. It went over there. 8.75. There's my place to draw up a line. And then I can just hit enter or escape. And now what we've got is we've got this other critical little center point for this arc that is, I think, 1/4 inch. Yeah, let me zoom out just a little bit here. This is a 1/4 inch radius from that center point. So I'm going to draw a circle that's a 1/4 inch. And that makes sense to me. If I look at these logically, I would think that this is like this is like 9 inches over overall. This is 8 3/4 over. So that means that is a 1/4 inch off. So that like this radius is going to kind of come up and be tangent to that line that we left. So I'm just kind of looking at those numbers, but back to visible line work, visible to a circle command by radius. That's the first one, really. This will always load the last one you had, too. So whatever you use last will be what's shown. So remember, if you use some weird one, I'm going to use this one again, radius. Here's the center of circle. And then I can just punch in that it's a 1/4 inch radius, 0.25. And then really it does show that's true. Like this geometry, this is a line tangent to a circle here. And they pretty much are running tangent at their quadrant there. So and then from there, we need to come up like across from this, that little bit above halfway. We need to hook that up and then be tangent to this now too. And that's not explicitly giving in like if I'm looking at this is something that I can just recognize, but I'm not given this dimension of where the line becomes tangent to this. So, but with CAD, we can just enter that it's tangent, and it will know there's only one coordinate point in the XY plane where that line will be tangent to that arc, especially if I've locked into this lower point here already. So if I lock in here first and draw this way, I can make CAD draw my line tangent to that arc. And so I'll show you how to do that. Here we go. Zoom out a little bit here. Back over to this. I'm in the visible object layer. I'm going to draw this line. I'm going to start it here. That's the intersection grip. So I'm going to click that. And then I'm going to pull this up. And then I'm just going to see what grips show up here. So I got a lot of them that'll show up. For sure, I could snap it to the quadrant. For sure, I could snap. This is a tangent grip. And that's only showing up, again, if I have that O snap on. So if you do not have, and it might not be default on yours, might not have this tangent one loaded. So if I don't have that one selected, I just don't get that little grip. I get quadrants and I might get like an intersection point. Yeah, I get a weird intersection point there. I don't know why it's picking that up. It's just, it can consider that that's an intersection point there. That's a perpendicular looking grip there. So I could kind of snap to perpendicular. There's center point. Well, what I really want is tangent. So I'm going to click tangent. Make sure that's on. Back in here. And anytime you're in a command and you want to switch that, you can just click on this. Like you can see me, it drags over and then it just drops my line when I'm over here on any of these tools. It'll just like pick me up when I come off it, right? It's kind of weird, but I can be in the middle of the command and go and change something in the middle of a command. It's no big deal. Yeah, so there's now that tangent's on, it shows up that there's tangent. And all I have to do is have the command there. I know it's like, well, where is tangent actually? It doesn't matter. As long as the grip is there, as long as the O snap is there, just click it and then I'm going to escape. And it put it in. That's not exactly how I thought it would. I thought that it would terminate it. It's funny that it let me draw it longer. It's like it is tangent, but it's actually drawn past. So that's kind of weird. I'll have to watch this. I want to trim this off probably. I might draw this another time. I want to see if that happens again because it's kind of weird. I thought it would cut itself off from here where it's tangent. It should actually terminate itself because there should only be one place. So that was me picking tangent like shy of that geometry. I'm gonna try to make that error again. Let me just see. Sometimes I find things I'm like, well, I didn't expect that. So I'm here. up to here. So if I'm kind of like looking at tangent and yeah, it will let you like not put that incorrect. So that's kind of interesting to me. Be careful with that is what I would say, I guess. Like I'm gonna make sure that I click that intersection point. I'm up here to tangent. And I think if I see that, we should be good to go. Just notice if you've had the tangent lock on and it's drawn further, that's going to be okay. We'll just need to know to trim it. If you're short of that, so I'm gonna show a couple of things here. I'm gonna show like if my error if I'd done that, like technically I should be getting that tangent. Yes, tangent, good. Call it good. If you ended up having it and it pulled it out like longer, oh, that's not gonna be good. Oh yeah, and you can mess up your geometry with these grips for sure, but I just wanted to see what other tangent. Yeah, mine seems to do a like every once in a while I'll do a weird one, but it does mostly normal. And what I'm doing is I'm like zooming in here and making sure that it doesn't have like excess drawn. But I'm just looking for that to be tangent like that. Tangent to a circle. How you'll know if we're wrong is when we go to do this trim now. So really I've kind of got the overall shape in. I just need to do some trim. We've got 10 minutes to finish this. We're gonna make it for sure. At least the overall profile. So before I do trim, like trim is weird. Let me show you. Like trim, because essentially what I'm doing is I'm trimming this circle. I only want this actual part of the circle here. I don't want any of this. So we use trim a lot. So trim is scissors. But it will trim between any geometry that you have drawn. So it recognizes that construction layer, and it makes me have to select all this in order to trim out what I don't want. And so it'll do the same thing here. Like all I really want is this upper portion of this circle. If yours did not trim like mine did, it could be that there's not a line. You don't have like good point to point lineup going on. You're not like, you haven't hit the snaps right. The geometry's not connected. I'm going to show you one more thing. I'm going to undo mine. Here's my undo button. If you ever do something and you didn't mean to do it, always on the top of your quick access is that little backwards arrow. But Control Z also works. If you're a keyboard input person, then control, you hold down Control and hit Z. Then you keep doing this like repeatedly, and it will get you. It will just keep undoing your commands. And zooming in and out is actually a command that it tracks. And so as I like zoom in and out, and I hit undo, it'll kind of undo those zooms, which is kind of weird. You can redo stuff too if it allow you. It doesn't always allow you to redo work, but I could redo. I can't redo the trimming, but anyway. So just so you know, I use the upper quick access a lot for my undo, but some people prefer Control Z. One thing usually when I'm trimming my geometry, I usually turn off this excess like this construction work and this busy because it just makes me have to do like more selecting to trim. And sometimes I just like to look at what the visible work is that I want to trim. And so you can turn off your layers. So that's the reason why we draw on layers is so you can like turn them on and off. So let me show you on your layers drop down, just the same way you would switch layers. You have these three little things. You can lock it so that it can't be moved or adjusted, or even, I don't even think you can manipulate it when it's locked. So all my layers are able to be manipulated because they're unlocked. They're also turned on because the light bulb is glowing. If you turn this off, it just turns off that layer. So it's one way to like turn on stuff, use it. And that's what I do with my construction layer a lot is I turn it on and off to look at my actual object that I'm drawing and make sure that it's everything, looks correct when the construction layer is turned off. The sun turns into a snowflake and it does turn it off. The snowflake is a freeze command, and all it does is it's really like I think I told you that some drawings can be hundreds of layers, right? And when you're navigating through a drawing that has something with hundreds of layers, it gets pretty busy for the computer to keep track of everything. It has to like keep track of all the information on those layers continually. Like so if you're modifying something on a layer, it's always tracking all of the layer data that's turned on and that's I guess it's thawed and it's got the sunshine turned on. It's always keeping track of all that data. So you actually free up your computer's computing processor a little bit by freezing layers. So that's kind of the strategy. And so when you have a drawing that has hundreds of layers, it does get a little laggy. Like supercomputers will drive them to just fine. You never have to worry about it. But some old laptops or whatever, they can get pretty laggy. And if you freeze layers that you're not using, it just stops. The computer doesn't have to sit there and process that information. So it can speed up like an old computer a little bit. And anyway, but it does turn it off so it disappears. I'm not going to really use freeze and thaw here. I just wanted to show you what these little things do. And I do use this one a lot. So I'm just going to turn it off. Turning it off means that the computer is still computing it though. It's going, it's running its locations in the background still. So it still needs, it's still processing that information. Well, trim. See what it does is with the trim command now is it just simplifies what I have to select. So I'm able just to do a single selection to trim that, and I'm able to come in here and just do a single selection to trim that. If yours did not trim like mine did easily, it just probably means that our tangent line didn't quite hit in the same spot. If yours is further past that, it might need to be trimmed off there. So mine was pretty good. Like I didn't have too many issues here, and so I like this. And then in the last 5 minutes, all we need to do is add the radiuses and do a mirror. And maybe we might have a little bit to finish up Thursday when we get back, but because I do want you to save this stuff. So maybe I kind of need to wrap up here. But let's see if we can do just a few more things here. I think the first thing I want you to do before, yeah, so let's not worry about finishing this. We can come back in on Thursday and finish this and then do some customization. All we gotta do is a quick mirror and then draw a little rectangle and we're good and we're golden almost and do the fillets. But one thing I want you to do here first is let's join all this together. You can see that I'm just going through here and selecting all this stuff. And they're all single line segments. We built them as like single commands, and so they're not all joined. Well, the machine will cut this fine. It doesn't really, as long as everything lines up point to point and there's no gaps between my geometry, the machine, the plas cutter will cut this profile no problem. I do one extra step as kind of a drafter, and I know that I'm feeding a machine, is I'll just join my geometry into like a single selection. And what I'm going to do is kind of like I showed you with that rectangle. When we drew the rectangle by all the lines, they were all individual lines. The machine would cut that just fine too. But then I did that rectangle command, and it was like a single selection to choose it. That is what I generally like to do with my geometry for machines to cut. And so how I do that is it's a modify command. It's kind of like this on this sub menu here. So I'm actually selecting this like drop down for modify. If you hover over these, they always kind of give you what they are. If you just hover for a second, it'll kind of show you what these commands are. Some of them we don't make sense out of yet, but this one that has arrows pointing to itself, this is join. So this will take like seemingly unjoined geometry and join it. It doesn't do it won't if things are not connected like end to end or grip to grip, it won't connect that kind of stuff. The stuff already has to be connected at the grips at the O snaps. Otherwise, it won't join it either. So, but what I do is I'm going to select this join command because the order of operations for CAD really is select a command and then select what you want to do with it. So I'm going to select join. Then it's going to say, well, what do you want to join? I'm going to try to join everything into one kind of like one connected line. And so I'm going to select this, and then I'm going to select this, and then I'm going to select this. And I could continue to do this, right? We don't have that much geometry. I could come around here and it all turns electric blue. And then if I just hit enter, it doesn't look like anything happened. But what should have happened is if I come over here and hover over it, I should be able to single select it now and it's all joined. Like the machine loves this because it knows that it guarantees you don't have breaks in your geometry. And the machine, once it starts cutting this line, it knows it's continuous. If yours didn't join, or if it joined like some sections and some not, usually it's you got to zoom in on these points and maybe pull them together because your geometry has these grips and they are blue when you're not like using them. If you click on them, they turn red, and you can pull stuff way out of alignment by grabbing what we call a hot grip. I have to be careful if the geometry isn't joined. I sometimes go back in with my construction layer on and I make sure what didn't get, what snaps didn't get aligned. I don't usually love to just like try to grab stuff and put it together without the construction layer on because I just don't know if I'm moving stuff out of alignment. And you could tell here I would move this in a horrible way. So you have to be careful with hot grips. You can totally misalign something. And so be careful if it didn't join, then that's one issue we got to track down. If it did join, good, you're like me, mine joined just fine. It means I hit snap to snap. And now what I want to do is save this. So right now, I don't even think we've saved. But where I would do like a save as, I think I just called this 2025 welding drawing, DWG. So I'm going to go up here to my quick access. I have quick access to a save bar up here. I'm going to do just a save as, because you haven't really selected like where to save this. For you guys, if you didn't bring your, I think what I'm gonna want you to do is email it to yourself. Then you'll have it and you can open it up next time we're in here together on Thursday. So right now, just to save it, you could just save it on the desktop for a minute. Like that's easy because it's just you'll be able to grab it off the desktop. There's not too much on these desktops to be able to find your file. So I might just choose desktop as my location and save it. You can even keep it the same name if you want to. There's no reason to rename it necessarily now, or you can name it whatever you want to name it. And then you just hit save. Mine already has one named that, so I do not want to replace it. No, so I don't even want to. I have to save mine like as maybe I'll save mine as a class two. You guys are the second time I've done this, so I already have one on my desktop like that. So I'll save it. Bam. Now, in the last bit of class, what I want you to do is email that to yourself, probably just to keep it. So have your go back to your email if you have it open. Mine is if you didn't bring you don't have access to your email, one of you. So I'll probably like send you this file, and then you'll be able to open it next time. Because you don't need to worry about saving yours if because you're in on mine. So don't email it to me. So the one, yeah, for the one guy that wasn't able to get into your email, try to get in next time so you can save this next time and pull up the drawing and stuff. But I'll save this copy and send it to you. And next time we get in here on Thursday, others of you should be able to go to your Gmail. And so I will now. Let me go into mine real quick. I just went to my email again, right? And I'm just going to compose a new email and just email it to yourself. There's me emailing this one to myself. You don't even have to really give it a subject necessarily. All we're looking to do is to save the file because it will, if you save it on the desktop here, it'll be wiped tonight. IT wipes our computers every night. So if you didn't bring a thumb drive, that's okay. Just email it to yourself. So I'm going to attach a file to my email. And I'm just going to go look for the desktop. Desktop, there it is. These are all the files that I have on my desktop. I don't have too many. I have a few. I'm looking for my welding DWG class 2 file. So I'm going to select that, just say open. And that's just going to add it to my email, right? And I can just say send that to myself. Then when we get in here Thursday, you'll be able just to open up your email and you'll have access to your file that you just created here. And really it should be the same way. We just download it. We would open it. And then when we get back in here next Thursday, we'll have it halfway drawn. It's really fast to finish it. And then we can talk about customization and talk about graphic arts a little bit. You guys got any questions? I'll stop here. I'm going to stop my video.
Grouping it, I don't know how you said that.